Today, I kind of just wanted to talk about being righteous and doing everything that you're supposed to do, and yet bad things keep happening. And I wanted to talk kind of about the idea of remaining firm and having a positive attitude despite what you're up against, despite what's going on. During my time with God, He led me to read Psalms 50. And the subtitle, if you're reading NLT, is The Lord's Obedient Servant. And I read it, and at first I didn't really understand it, but then as I went through verse for verse, I started to understand the main message of it. And I just want to read a little bit of it to you. So it says, "Morning by morning He wakens me and opens me to His understanding His will. The sovereign Lord has spoken to me, and I have listened. I have not rebelled or turned away. I've offered my back to those who beat me, and my cheeks to those who pulled out my beard. I did not hide my face from the mockery and spitting, because the sovereign Lord helps me, and I will not be disgraced." And this is just kind of going to be the focal point of what we talk about today, because a part that really struck me is when he said, the Lord has spoken and I have listened. I have not rebelled. I have not turned away. But then he goes on to talk about how he's being mocked and spat on, and how people are beating him and pulling his beard out and doing all of these things. And it sounds very harsh for somebody who hasn't rebelled against God, or somebody who's been being obedient. And I think something that a lot of us struggle with sometimes is wondering why God allows bad things to happen to good people, or why God allows us to go through so much despite the fact that we've been nothing but good, nothing but obedient. And I just want to challenge that idea, because I think a lot of the times when we talk about God, we forget about His sovereignty. We forget that God has the ability to do whatever He pleases, whenever He pleases to do it. And we're not always going to understand His will, and we're not always going to understand His intentions behind why He puts us in certain situations of our lives. And I know it's super hard, especially in those times where you're like, I haven't rebelled. I've been doing what I've been told. I've been being obedient. I would think that there's a reward for all of this, and yet I'm just suffering. But then the writer follows up by saying, "Because the Lord is sovereign and helps me, I will not be disgraced. I've set my face like stone, and I'm determined to do His will, and I know that I will not be put to shame." And so even though the writer is going through all of these things, in the midst of that, the writer is focusing his gaze on Christ, because he knows that he will not be put to shame. He knows that eventually His help will come. Why? Because the Lord is sovereign, because the Lord can intervene at any point. And so I think sometimes what kind of rattles us is like, well, if God can intervene at any point and He sees how much I'm suffering, why hasn't He intervened yet? But I think another way that we can think about that is saying, well, if God is sovereign over my situation and He hasn't intervened yet, then that means He knows exactly what's going to happen, and He trusts me to handle what He's bringing. And I know that when it truly becomes too much for me to bear, then He will intervene. And sometimes God gives us the grace to learn our lesson early. But I love how the writer started off by saying, "Morning by morning He wakens me." And that, I think, is just a perfect way to talk about the grace of God, the mercy of God, and the sovereignty of God. Like, it's not by force that God has to wake us up to see another day. God does not have to be gracious enough and merciful enough to wake us up every single morning, but yet He does. And so in the moments where we feel like God should be doing more, or in the moments where we feel like God is not doing enough, we have to remember that He's sovereign. We do not put breath in our own lungs. And so then when we work our way down, after he says, "I will not be put to shame," he says, "He who gives me justice is near. Who will dare bring a charge against me? Where are my accusers? Let them appear. The Lord is sovereign, and He's on my side. So who will declare me guilty?" And I love that part as well, because even in the midst of people mocking you, in the midst of people coming against you, another part of learning about the Lord's sovereignty is learning that the accusations can come, but when it's really time to stand trial, God has the final say. People can accuse you and call you guilty and tell you that you've done things, but if God does not find you guilty in His eyes, you are not guilty. And so when things are out of our control, or we don't feel like we have the final say, or we don't feel like we're in control of a situation that's coming up against us, we can easily take that to God and know that in the courts of heaven, He has the final say. And to end off Psalms 50, the writer says, "Who among you fears the Lord and obeys His servant?" If you are walking in darkness without a ray of light, trust in the Lord and rely on your God. But watch out, you who live in your own light, and warm yourselves with your own fires. This is the reward that you will receive from me. You will soon fall down in great torment. And to me, that verse was talking about how when we think we're sovereign over our own lives, when we want to be in control and sovereign over our own situations, and so we start relying on our own light to guide us through, we start relying on our own fires to keep us warm, we are not all knowing, we are not all encompassing, and we're extremely flawed. So eventually that light will give out, eventually that fire will stop burning. And when that happens, when the fire stops burning, you're left in complete coldness. And when the light goes out, you're left in complete darkness. And I think that's what the writer was referring back to when he said, you will be in torment, because when there is no light and there's only darkness, you have no clue what's going on. You can't see, you can't control the darkness. But when we rely on the light of God, and when we rely on God to guide our paths, to bring the fire from the Holy Spirit to keep us warm, we can trust and know that that light will never go dim, that fire will never burn out. And so I guess I'm just reflecting on Psalms 50 to tell you, like, God has really been teaching me a lot in this season about his sovereignty, and we really need to learn how to trust God and believe that he is who he says he is. God said, if there's any name that you call me, I am that I am. And so we have to trust that he is who he says he is, and that he's watching diligently over our situations, and he knows exactly when to intervene. But, I give you the example of a parent and a child. Sometimes a child is learning how to walk for the first time, and the parent so badly wants to intervene, right? Because they're afraid the child's going to tumble over and fall, or they're trying to give the child a helping hand so that they don't crash down on the floor. But sometimes as a parent, you just have to kind of let go of your child's hand, and if they fall, they fall. But trust that your child is desperate enough, trust that your child is willing enough to learn how to walk, and that they will get back up on their own. And so if we kind of use that analogy, we can see it in a way of God's not trying to be cruel, God's not trying to be harsh by not intervening in your circumstances, but God is trying to teach you how to walk. God is trying to teach you to stop crawling and to start walking. And when he sees that you need help, when he sees that, okay, this fall might be really bad, then he will intervene. But above all, he is sovereign. And so we can trust that when we're being obedient to God and when we're following in his will, even if adversity comes, even if we don't necessarily deserve it, we can trust that God is using it to work everything out for our good and for his glory. And we can also trust that he's good enough to intervene when we need it the most. So I hope you learned something from this art and talk. Thank you for joining me today, and I hope to see you back next week.